Help Us on the Way for Orchestra is a symphony, and I would love to get it performed. I like to give some updates on where we're at with the symphony. So remember, last week I did a posting, and basically I was saying my big focus right now is to find what are the daily actions that are going to get this symphony performed. It's not going to happen overnight, but there's got to be certain things I can do daily to just like move it a little bit closer to getting performed. And I also mentioned that in order to get the symphony performed, we need the backing of the general public. Okay, we need a lot of people who are just really just want to hear some beautiful classical music. So I like to do a replay of some of the highlights of this week and some of the things that I will be working on. So the first thing I start doing is doing an analysis between YouTube Shorts and TikTok because, as I mentioned in the previous video, I have seen a huge dip in viewership on YouTube Shorts. It's not actually just this Help Us on the Way channel. I've seen it on my other YouTube channels and across other platforms, other creators is a common thread. It has to do a little bit with how they're advertising shorts versus long form. But regardless, that doesn't excuse not having a high performance, right? We need a high performance for the symphony. We need more people watching and interested and engaged because it's that energy that's going to build continuous momentum to getting the symphony performed. Because one of the things I mentioned in that video is I do not want just some random orchestra to say, okay, we'll perform it, but I have no say in the process, and it's just very quick, and I don't get to ensure the quality, right? One of the dangers I talked about in that last video is that as artists, we become what I call learned helplessness. We learn to become helpless and desperate and just take whatever we can get, whatever comes. No, it's not going to fly, okay? Help Us on the Way for Orchestra is a symphony. And like I mentioned in the previous video, I moved to Paris, France to get extra training so that this symphony would be like the best it could possibly be. And so we want the best possible performance. So that means we're going to bring it to the people and we're going to motivate until it's just inevitable. At a certain point, if like 20,000 people are screaming to get Help Us on the Way performed, I don't think an orchestra is going to say no to that because, of course, the big fear for orchestras is that, no one comes to the concert for new music. So I mentioned my frustration that I'm not able to get views on YouTube Shorts, despite the fact when I look at the analytics, I see the same level of enthusiasm, just the proportions there, but just the amount of views are down. So I started doing a test and I started comparing it to TikTok, okay? And I like to share one of the first results. So either Thursday or Wednesday of this week, you may have seen this if you follow me on Instagram, but I released a D minor section of the symphony, which I've released many times before, but there's a new look and feel where it has multiple layers. So you get like a kind of multiple perspectives versus just one perspective. And for, as of the recording, like when I look down to see the metrics, and I released this on TikTok and YouTube Shorts at the same time. So at the time when about 24 hours later, when I did the metrics, TikTok had 797 views and YouTube Shorts had 26 views. That's a really staggering difference, okay? And to me, it cannot be explained by viewers on YouTube Shorts who are not interested in that content. I think it either has to do with the posting time or something that we cannot, it's just very difficult. And I think it becomes very dangerous to constantly adjust your content because you look at the numbers and not what you want because you have to do an accurate analysis. And this is why I'm doing the analysis. I don't want to make changes to the content. And certainly I'm not going to make changes to the symphony, but we can make changes to how we present the shorts or the branding or the look and feel. That can all be changed to get a symphony performed, but we don't want to make knee-jerk reactions just because the numbers aren't what they are. I find that is a big problem for people when they're in this kind of social media space, is like they don't get the numbers they want, and they change it, and then you lose the essence of what you're doing. So that is why we're comparing TikTok to YouTube Shorts. So TikTok, I released the same short basically at the same time, and it has almost 800 views on TikTok, versus the same short on YouTube Shorts, basically the same time, has 26 views. Okay, so yes, there are differences in what platforms like and what viewers like on each platform, certainly, but the gap there cannot be explained that the short isn't good. Like there has to be more digging that needs to be investigated, which is why I'm doing this. In regards to likes between these two shorts, on TikTok we had 26 likes, okay, and on YouTube Shorts we had 1 like, okay. Now, interestingly enough, if you do the math, which you may have seen on the Instagram post I did, but I'll just give you the breakdown. The YouTube Shorts actually has a higher percentage of likes compared to the TikTok. Now, this is just one sampling, one moment in time, so it's not something we can build a trend off of, but it is something to notice that if we were to boost visibility in YouTube Shorts, and what would it take to boost that visibility? It's going to take a lot of experimenting. I still think there might be a higher potential to reach a wider spectrum of the public. In fact, I definitely know a lot of older people or who are not very technology savvy. Definitely they're not on TikTok, but they might be on YouTube. I don't know about YouTube Shorts, but they definitely might be on YouTube. So to me, this is a little bit of a small confirmation just for one nugget in time that we need to keep investing in YouTube. Then now I want to mention some criticism I got about the symphony, not about the music itself, but about the short's presentation style. Someone mentioned, I forget how they phrased it, but I didn't understand. And then this person explained that they can't see the music, okay, or it's just too animated. And I think I've been trying a lot of things out because we want this to be engaging. I think there's also a lot of pressure in today's day and age of social media and excitement. So you gotta hook the listener. Shorts viewers want stimulation, and I think that can play into our marketing. And so I think the criticism is a valid criticism, but I don't know if it's true. So one thing to keep in mind, we have to be careful, is that's one person's opinion, okay? So just one person's opinion, if you change the whole strategy for that one person, then again, it's going back to this thing of just not giving it time to see things out. If you constantly adjust things, it's really hard to evaluate because the strategy keeps shifting. Now, if many people over time make this criticism, then that has more weight. But after all, a lot of people won't make that, right? They'll just move on to the next short. So this is valuable information. Now, what I did is I started looking at them because I make them in Adobe Premiere Pro on a computer, a big computer. And I guess sometimes to see better, I have a wider view, but I don't, I guess I wasn't fully looking at the cell phone view. I thought it was, but then I looked at one of these shorts for the D minor section of the symphony, and I looked at it, on my cell phone, and I saw actually the print was too small. So what for me in this particular short was an issue of the animation was too crazy, but I had 3 different sections. Okay, I have the woodwinds, the brass, and the strings, or something like that. And though I was really fascinated, to be able to show different lines. And if those of you who are really following the channel, you may have seen a YouTube community post I had in 2020 and 2025 asking for feedback, about these having the multi-perspective versus the one perspective. And the response was overwhelming that yes, we prefer the multi-perspective, but it could have been that just that particular short, that particular style. And then I sought to perfect that skill over the coming months. So I haven't really done a single view in a very long time. Maybe I will go back to it. So the reason I'm going off on this tangent is to show you that unexpectedly we gained a new skill. So how do we use this skill? That remains to be seen. This could be just me as a composer being creative and not thinking practically, but I like being able to show 2 perspectives at once, right? You have the accompaniment and the melody. I think that gives a lot more for the viewer. If you show the entire score, it's too tiny on YouTube Shorts, so we have to make decisions about what to show, what not to show. When I first started this channel, like a year or two ago, I did not have the skill set yet to do that. So I had to just show one view. And if you remember the very first shorts, it wasn't even moving. And very quickly I was realized ça passe pas, as we say in French. It's just not acceptable. It's not engaging. And so I started doing a moving score, and then I added, just refined it. And now we're at a level where I can show multiple perspectives, accompaniment and melody at the same time, which I think is pretty cool. But we also have to think about how the viewer is going to perceive it. And what I will be doing is paying more attention to how this looks like on the cell phone. And then if I need to make changes, I'll have to go back, which is very annoying, but it has to be done. One thing I forgot to mention is another thing I started doing, and you see it's the roller coaster ending of the symphony, is to have a slower scrolling rate across the screen. Because when I looked at it on my phone, I was like, I know the music, so I don't need to, I can see what it's supposed to be, but I think not everyone can do that. Now, another thing to keep in mind is we have two basic audiences for this symphony. Okay, we have the musician audience like yourself, people who are studying music, who really love music, who are like kind of, either professionals or just high level amateurs who like really know music. And then we have the general public, people who like classical music or were always curious, but may not have the formal training. And my assumption could be very much off the charts, totally wrong, is that being able to read the music is more important for us, the musicians, and we will need to get a lot of musicians on board, because I would want to recruit musicians when I have the money to perform the symphony. I would want to recruit musicians directly. But versus for the general public, I don't know if it's important that they can read that music across the page. I'm wondering if the highly animated is better. But of course, a lot of these could be just ideas in my head. I think we need to do a better job of tracking how it plays out, tracking the watch time. But I found just YouTube, it's so volatile based on time, and it's just so inconsistent. Like the one short, the next short, the same series. I can't really tell why one is performing over the other, which goes back again to the comparison I've started doing with TikTok. I think it's going to take several months before we have real information, but it's something to think about. Now, one little compromise I started doing, if you saw with the roller coaster ending of the symphony, partly based on the criticism I got, but also just seeing like what's another way to keep the people engaged, is to have larger looking music, right? So in the original uni perspective, just one perspective, you could see the music really well, but I still want to show two different things at the same time. But instead of showing 3 different things or 4 different things and you can't see any of it, just stick with 2 different things and to see how that goes well. But I'm also interested in the scrolling rate. So in the latest short I have for the roller coaster ending of the symphony, my feeling is that it's a little bit slow and it's not engaging for the eyes, but it is much easier to read. And another thing to think about is really the visual is kind of secondary, right? Like this is a symphony, you're not going to have a visual when you go to the concert, okay? So it is secondary, but at the same time, we have to advertise the symphony, and we're advertising it through a medium that is very visual. So there is this constant tug and pull between the two. A slight shift in strategy that I'm flirting with, I started, and you may have noticed, is to release longer excerpts of the symphony. Originally, when we started the channel, I had like all over the place. It was definitely longer excerpts for sure. But then doing a lot of smaller shorts from that longer excerpt. But then I started to notice over time that the best performing shorts were the ones that were like the 20-second mark. The longer the short, the less people watch. Though, is that really a problem? I don't know if it's a problem. There's just a lot of things that we don't really know. We don't have enough data yet. But I have started doing longer shorts. The problem with the longer shorts, though, is that you spend, like, let's say a week making that short, and then you release it, and then it's done. And so that's why I started doing the smaller shorts from that, because it was just easier to have more consistent content over time. But certainly there's got to be a balance, because I know a lot of you who really enjoy the music and want to hear perform would probably prefer a longer short. Now, what I've been doing up until very recently, or probably still doing recently, is directing viewers to the main website. barneymusic.com/helpisontheway if they want to watch the full video. But from my kind of basic analysis is we're not getting a lot of traffic to the Help Us on the Way website. So either it's a question that we don't have enough volume, like it's one thing, for every 500 views you get one site visit. Then you need, if you want 10 site visits, you can do the math. Or maybe there's just not enough interest yet in the symphony and we have to build interest, and that's something that has to be learned. Everything that we're doing here, though I do not know of a previous case of someone taking their symphony to the people and getting enough support from the people that they could finance it, it's not like this hasn't been done before, right? I talked about that in the first video, that, imagine the energy you would need to amass to win a war or to do something, this is nothing compared to that, okay? I'm not saying this is nothing, but this is nothing compared to that. It is very, very possible. We've seen a lot of people take off. I'm not looking to take off in terms of my personality, but I want the symphony to take off. We've seen a lot of people that have taken their case to people, do social media posting, and gain a following. And though it takes time, they can build towards a better future. So that is the vision I have for Help Us on the Way for Orchestra. If you have any questions or any opinions or feedback on the shorts presentation, then feel free to let me know, because I do value that feedback and I will take it into consideration when I'm building the shorts. Thank you so much for watching, and let's get this symphony performed.